All right, hello and welcome to the SEO Lounge. We're going to get started in about a minute.
Excellent. So if you can hear us, if you can see us, jump in the chat and let us know.
Yeah,
Let
tell
us
us where
know.
you're joining from.
It's a problem when you've got two hosts, right, Lauren? We always just say the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, I can't quite read your mind yet.
Mm, yeah, and there's probably like a second delay as well. So even if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's begin. I think it's time. So on the hour, prompt and punctual. Welcome everyone to the SEO Lounge, where each month we host community training events with one of our IMG SEO instructors. So what we do is dive into the strategies that they're using to grow organic traffic and conversions and unpack their recipes for success. Today, the title of the training is Quick Traffic Wins, which is actually a section inside of Robbie Richards' IMG course called the Content Audit Playbook.
Great. We are very lucky to have us in the green room, Robbie Richards, which we'll intro in just a minute. I'm Lauren Proctor, calling in from New York City, and this is Andrew Steven, your host.
Yep, I'm coming in from Berlin, where it is very late right now. But that's what happens when we broadcast across 3 time zones. I got the short end of the stick this time. A
Yeah.
reminder not to do any more events in the near future with SEOs based in Australia, which is a bit of a hypocritical thing to say for me because I'm actually from Australia, but not in Australia.
Cool. So, if you don't know about us yet, we are part of IMG Courses, and we are the largest courses membership program in the world. And if you join us, you'll get access to 35 traffic and income generating courses from the world's top SEOs, one of which you'll be hearing from today. And we add new courses, or at least one new course every month, and we cover different learning tracks. So if you know that you want to be an affiliate marketer or you want to perfect local SEO, you can join IMG. We also have link building, technical SEO, on page SEO, content strategy, and agency and team training. So there's some black hat, there's some white hat, and everything in between. Right now, you can join for $97 a month and you get all kinds of bonuses. We also have the world's largest SEO testing team, and we release peer reviewed tests that tell you what's working in Google right now. So check it out at internetmarketing.gold. And if you stay on the line, we're going to be teasing a discount that's specifically affiliated with this event.
Awesome. Okay, so welcome to all of the IMG community members and also to all of our connections through LinkedIn and the various SEO Slack groups that we've made connections through, to our Facebook community, and also to everyone in our email list, which is joining us today. I believe we've got around about 400 people attending, so I think that's because Robbie is such an awesome SEO trainer and has such a great reputation. Let's do a quick rundown of the schedule for today. We have, of course, the workshop. That is the main event, and that's going to be running for around about 60 minutes. And then we have around about 30 minutes for this intro and for some Q&A after the session if we don't get to the questions during the actual workshop.
Awesome. And it doesn't matter where you're watching this event from. If you submit your questions in the chat area, then we will automatically get your info. We're seeing all the chat coming in through now, and it's nice to see familiar names as well as some new names. And that chat should be either if you're on mobile, if you're watching it on our website below, your below the video or to the right on desktop. So if you're having any issues streaming from our website, just click below the video and you'll get to YouTube, and that should fix it. So if you took Robbie's full-length course or you are in the middle of it, then let us know if you have feedback, questions about that. We'll get to that as well.
I think it's time to introduce Robbie.
All right, let's do it. Let's bring Robbie to the screen.
Okay. So I'll start with this. Robbie is a very well-known SEO trainer, famous for, amongst other things, the SEO Playbook series of courses. He's been praised over the years for his over-the-shoulder style of training by some industry-leading experts such as Tim Solo of Ahrefs, Noah Kagan from Sumo, Georgi Todorov, one of our previous guests from the second last episode, and Gail Breton from Authority Hackers. I can also personally vouch for his live training, as he's actually one of the few IMG instructors which I've seen present live in person, and that was at the DMSS conference in Bali a couple of years ago, Robbie. Robbie runs the SEO firm Vireo.com, where they're working mostly with fast-growing SaaS companies. Robbie, I believe you actually started Vireo while living in Idaho. Am I right? But
yeah, exactly.
You've since moved back to Australia with your family.
Yeah. We started Vireo in Boise, Idaho about 9 years ago, and moved back to Australia at the end of 2019, right before all the COVID stuff happened.
Right. And tell us, what is it like finally emerging from one of the world's longest lockdowns in Australia?
I think I'll be able to give you a little bit better sense next Thursday when I get my second jab and I'm officially able to leave my my 3-mile radius that I've been living in here for about 3.5 months. Almost there.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure you'll have a great time when that happens. So, tell us a little bit about how you got started in SEO and what motivated you to start training others.
Yeah, so I got an internship with a large advertising agency when I graduated from college in 2011, and basically I worked on a team with a bunch of different people who were email marketers. There was a couple SEOs, analytics people, and just kind of got interested listening to them speaking and got my hands on a few different projects that way, and then I ended up teaming up with one of the guys who I work with now, and just started doing part-time some little local SEO projects while I was kind of learning things, and just kind of gradually snowballed from there to where we eventually were able to start Vireo and have enough work to kind of do that full time. And so, yeah, it's been a evolving process over the years. We've niched down in a few different areas. We've been everywhere from like legal to healthcare to now the last few years we've been pretty much exclusively SaaS companies. So yeah, just sort of evolved over time that way. It's been a good ride. And then in terms of the training piece of it, one of the ways that I actually learned SEO, and I think a lot of people do, is just by diving in, creating websites, testing, doing things, seeing what works and taking that to client projects. And so while I was doing that, I was testing things on personal projects. And I was like, you know what, why don't I just, start basically going step by step through some of the projects I'm working on. Like I basically reached out to my email list for one of the working examples in the IMG course for the content audit playbook. Someone on my list had a fairly large wedding affiliate site, and she reached out and said, hey, I'll let you look at my website if you can use it as like an example and give us the audit findings. So, just really enjoyed, I love everything process based, repeatable things that get results. And so I thought, well, while I'm doing this, I might as well just document it and share it with people, and hopefully it helps them. So that's basically how that came about. So.
Awesome. So what is it like specializing in SEO for SaaS? Like, what's different about that and about your day-to-day?
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much day-to-day difference, but the reason why I love working with SaaS companies is, well, there's a few different things. Like by niching down into SaaS, like again, going back to our processes and things, we can really, I guess, standardize a lot of it. So it's a lot more repeatable and we can scale that across a larger client base with a smaller team, which that's been one big thing. But the thing that really excites me about SaaS and the ones we generally work with sort of smaller and mid-cap SaaS companies that are growing really fast, they're getting funding. They just see the value of SEO as an investment. Whereas in some industries, it almost felt like SEO was a bit viewed as more of a cost center as opposed to a long-term investment. And so that mentality is a little bit different with SaaS companies, which is really cool. They invest a lot into it. They have internal teams a lot of times to help supplement what you're doing. So you can generally just get results faster too, because there's more buy-in in general. So that just makes it a lot more fun. And then we've had some clients in the past too that, we've been a part of their growth. We're small or a large piece, and some of them end up getting acquired. And it's just really cool to see that type of stuff, like the impact that you're having. So I guess that's the main reason.
Right. Okay. I know working with more older established companies, you tend to get a lot of pushback from different departments and stuff, which you probably don't get so much working with more modern SaaS companies that understand the benefits of what you're doing and are more streamlined, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like there's still a little bit of that here and there, especially when you get into some of the more regulated industries. There's a lot more oversight from compliance and different things. But for the most part, things move a lot faster too. Again, just the mentality of a SaaS company, the kind of build it, break things kind of growth mindset that way. They take that to their marketing a lot. So they're willing to test things and just move quickly. And so that, in addition to the buy-in, it's just a fun sort of climate to work in. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Could you take us through quickly what you're teaching inside of the content audit playbook in IMG courses? What's in the course, who's it for, and what do people get out of it when they take the course?
Yeah, for sure. So the content audit playbook, I would say it's more of a technical content audit. There's actually some technical SEO issues that you can surface through the process as well. But I would say it's more geared towards sites that have some sort of existing content footprint. Also in terms of skill level, I would say it's probably more for people who have at least some sort of SEO content foundation. It's not kind of a what is a content audit like introductory. It's sort of straight into the process. It's very step-by-step tutorial, working example from start to finish. And it basically just teaches you how to go through and not only find all the content on your site that can basically be indexed by Google, but then map data points to it that allow you to make strategic recommendations that will not only help offset or eliminate technical issues, but also get more traffic to all the existing content you have, and also to get more conversions from assets that you are already getting traffic to. And it's a process you can run through in a week or two, depending on the size of your site, maybe a little bit longer than that. But by the end of it, you'll have a finished deliverable that you can actually hand off to your boss or a client. And if you're in the services business, you can even sell these content audits for several $1,000s, really, depending again on the size of the site. So, I really tried to package it in a way to where not only was it actionable, but I know a lot of people are agency or client focused. So something they could maybe even sell as a service or at least integrate it into what they're already doing as well. So that's kind of how it's being positioned. Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing.
And more specifically, the quick traffic wins. So this is actually a process that you go through in your agency when you bring in a new client at Pareo. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've used this process on clients, several personal projects, or a lot of them as well. And it's definitely something that, while if you have experience in SEO and content, some of the concepts in here are probably not going to be groundbreaking, but I'm hoping that the process that we go through here will, in identifying the opportunities, will make it more efficient and scalable, and then ultimately qualifying the best opportunities so that you can actually work on the things that are going to have the biggest impact the quickest for your business. It's a very repeatable process that you can really apply to any business. So hoping people get some good nuggets from it.
Great.
Right.
And can you give a couple examples maybe of some benefits that clients have seen once they've implemented this?
Yeah, so I guess the easiest one is the working example that is in the IMG content audit module is that wedding affiliate site that I had mentioned in terms of just traffic growth, organic traffic growth. They, I think, trying to remember now, in the first 60 days, I believe it was, they increased their organic traffic about 30%. And after a year, they had really, as you'll see in the course, they had really widespread cannibalization and content quality issues that we were able to identify and fix. And the site grew from around 50,000 to over 100,000 organic visits a month by the end of the year. And they really didn't add a lot of new content to the site to get there. It was really working with the large amount of content they already had, but they had a lot of issues there. So that was one example there. And we literally go start to finish as the working example in that content audit playbook. But then there's lots of, I'll go through some examples too, even in this presentation, but in terms of quick wins, everything from like really small, right? Like we had one SaaS client where they only had brand new website, only getting 1,000 organic visits a month, but by just implementing some of the quick win processes, just with really basic things around internal linking and light content updates, they went from 1 to 1,500 organic visits a month, right? Within 30 days, but that generated a 50% increase in trial signups. But then there's other more extreme cases where we've got sites going from 200,000 to close to 400,000 monthly organic visits within, I wouldn't say 90 days, maybe more 6-month period. But again, a lot of that's driven by just leveraging what they already have. And I think on one of the LinkedIn threads recently, it might have been one of the IMG ones, someone chimed in about how FreshBooks was doing something similar and how they'd gone from doing, I think, around 140 to over 300,000 organic visits in a really short period of time, leveraging a lot of their existing content. There's like countless examples of it. The caveat is that you do need to have some sort of existing content footprint to work with, but even incremental gains or really large scale, like if you can get them quick, you can get buy-in from your boss or your client quicker, establish that trust, and it just paves a really solid foundation for all that other ongoing SEO effort or initiatives that you're going to implement on. So, yeah, I'll kind of rambling there, but I'll stop.
No, you weren't rambling at all. But we are getting hassled to get to the workshop, so let's jump into the meat in a minute. But just firstly, before we do, what are the kind of the prerequisites that people are going to need to implement what you're about to teach in terms of like what are the tools they're going to need? We can go quickly into the templates that you've got, and I think you already mentioned the experience level as being intermediate.
Yeah, I would say intermediate would probably be a good starting point in terms of experience, just because you are going to need some of that foundational knowledge to understand what we're talking about when it comes to qualifying things and intent and looking at different link signals and stuff that we'll dive into here in the presentation. If you're just starting out, it might be a little bit over your head. Maybe not, I don't know, but that's generally what I would recommend. And then in terms of tools, there are some paid tools that we use, not a ton of them. And honestly, a lot of the SEO tools out there do the core functionality that we would need, whether that's SEMrush, Ahrefs, or whatever it is. And I do provide a couple free Google Sheet templates that people can use in this presentation to automate some of the more tedious manual data crunching stuff. But if you're working with a really limited budget too, there's some really low cost tools out there that again will do some of this just basic keyword analysis, or you can even use Search Console as well to do some of this stuff in terms of identifying existing keyword opportunities. So you don't necessarily have to have a big paid tool set. So
Awesome. Well, everyone who comes is going to receive the replay. We've had this question a couple times, and Robbie, I hear you're going to give away some of the spreadsheets or one of the spreadsheets that you're using during this session. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I've got two spreadsheets in here that people are welcome to take and use and give it a go in their business. And then trying to think, those two templates.
Awesome. Great. Well, shall we let Robbie take over?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Cool. So go ahead and share your screen whenever you're ready, and we'll switch over.
While you're doing that, Robbie, we're going to go for about 60 minutes now. If you cannot make it to the end, as Laura mentioned, we're going to be sending out the replay, and the replay will also have some timestamps in there which connect to the presentation. So you won't miss anything if you have to check out during this the workshop. Just check your email tomorrow.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Cool. All right. Well, let's jump in. So I think we've gone through the intro here, but if you want to connect with me anywhere else, you can come over to my blog, robbierichards.com, or even on YouTube. I'm trying to get a little bit more active there too. So feel free to check me out there if you would like to connect. So yeah, as we kind of touched on a little bit, the premise of this presentation is really around this concept where whether you're working with an employer, you got a boss, or even working client side, right? You often get asked the question, how long until we start seeing results? And often the answer is something like, it depends, or SEO is a long-term play. It's going to take 12 months or 18 months, which in some cases that is true. But there are things that you can do to land quick wins for your clients or even your own company that you're working at. And that's really the premise of this presentation. Is we're going to be looking at a process that you can use to go through and get quick organic traffic and conversion gains from the assets that you're already getting traffic from. And the whole premise here is we want it to be repeatable, scalable, and something that you can apply to pretty much any business, no matter what you're working on. So I've got a pretty sequential process when it goes to working with clients and even on personal projects, all the way from doing the initial content audit to the existing keywords. Those two sort of work together, like you would see in the content audit course with IMG's platform there. But one we're going to be focusing on here today is existing keywords, or more specifically existing content opportunities. And I know a lot of people have probably heard of this concept before, but hopefully you'll get something different from the process here. Like I mentioned earlier, not only are we going to be finding the opportunities, but how do we qualify the best ones, the ones that are going to have the biggest impact on your bottom line? And then how do we relaunch those so that we can get those results as quickly as possible? So that's really the premise of this presentation. And as I mentioned, there is a caveat. It does work best when you do have a site with some sort of existing content footprint. And the larger the content footprint, probably the more value you'll get from this process. But I have used this same process on even local companies before, to where, they may only have 50 to 100 pages on their site. It can still work. Even if you only get one or two really good opportunities, you can show progress quickly and get more buy-in from your boss or clients. So typically we'll see a 20 to 25% lift in organic traffic within 90 days after going through this process. And the basic idea here, there's really three core parts to it. We're going to find all our bottom page 1, top page 2 keyword rankings, but then we're going to look at a series of steps you can take to qualify the best opportunities, prioritize those opportunities based on your site's monetization model. And then we're going to go through some quick things you can do to help relaunch and get those results really, really quickly. So before we jump straight into the process, I just want to reiterate again, with the SERPs, as most of us would probably know, right, that most of the clicks are top heavy in the search results. Most of them go to the top 3 positions. So even if you're in position 4, 5, or the bottom of page 1 for a keyword, you're going to get a very, very small fraction of the traffic potential around that topic. So if you can move even one page that has decent volume or traffic potential from, say, 4 or 5 into positions 1 or 2, that could be a material impact on traffic and conversions for your business. But then if you're able to scale this over 5, 10, 100 assets, we're talking potentially huge gains in a relatively small window of time, which again helps sell the ongoing service and value of what you're doing as an SEO to the businesses that you're working with. So I almost view quick wins as a sales tool as well, right? Like if you can show quick progress, you can get buy-in and you can sell more services on an ongoing basis. So what this can look like, here's just a few examples here. This is a while ago, but this one here is a blog promotion guide that I did. Ran through a really quick relaunch process that we're about to look at. And you can see month over month going from around 1,000 to 4,800 organic page views, like pretty big increase. Moving down the funnel to an affiliate-based asset where it was around best keyword research tools. Again, quick relaunch, going through this process, 87% month over month gain. Since that's a post that I could monetize through affiliates, that was a fairly material uptick in commissions that I could make now. And then here's one even really recently from a SaaS business where they had a couple solution and product pages where we're actually actively going through this process at quite a large scale with them now. But you can see month over month that 25, 60% organic traffic increases to these pages. So whether you're looking at trying to get more traffic, downloads, trial signups, sales, like if you can increase the traffic quickly to these assets, you can also drive more conversions as well. And so HubSpot actually, I should have included the link here, but basically they have a whole team dedicated to this process with the quick wins, right? So they'll go through, or more specifically, identifying assets that have maybe slipped in the rankings and then moving them up. So, in terms of that, you can build out a whole team around this too if you have it at enough scale or enough content to work through. But the process now that we're going to work through at a real top level, so we're going to go through each one of these step by step. First one is we're going to collect all of your rankings data. Then we're going to filter it. Then we're going to qualify the quickest win opportunities. Then we're going to prioritize the targets by your site's monetization or business model. And then we're going to relaunch for those quick wins. So the first step here is we want to collect all of that rankings data. And we want to start specifically with a keyword difficulty baseline, because what that's going to allow you to do when we move into the qualification step in this process is have somewhat of a proxy to then filter out the opportunities that you should look at first from a competitive standpoint. So we'll jump into each of those steps now. I'm going to use SEMrush as this working example, but again, you can use Ahrefs, you can use any number of SEO tools. If you don't have budget, you can also go in and use Search Console to filter out these existing keyword opportunities as well. And I have a video in that course as well that touches on that free option. So basically, you'll come into the organic research report here in the SEO toolkit, just drop in your domain and then filter positions 1 to 5. And the premise here is if we have keywords already ranking in the top 5 positions for a certain keyword difficulty range, then it's likely that we can move other keywords that have similar keyword difficulty range into the top 5 positions. Now you're going to export this data. There's going to be quite a bit of it. Don't let that overwhelm you because, as we mentioned at the start, I'm going to give you a template here that's going to help crunch these numbers and do a lot of the manual formatting and data pulling for you. The link is below here. I also have a YouTube video on my YouTube channel that I go through the specific working of this template step by step as well, if you're interested in checking that one out too. But basically what you'll do here, you can kind of see we're dropping in that exported keyword data into the first tab, and then it's going to automatically crunch that data and format a keyword difficulty distribution graph for you. What that looks like here, just looking at one of the sites for the working example that for this presentation, most of the keywords are falling in the 60 to 75 difficulty distribution bucket. So again, I'll take a note of that. And that'll be sort of the range that I'm looking at when I start to vet and qualify my existing keyword opportunities. So the next step that we want to do now that we have that keyword difficulty baseline proxy in place and listed somewhere is come back over to the organic research report, drop in our domain again, but this time we want to filter for the existing keywords that are ranking outside the top 3 or top 5 positions. And you can set it to say 6 to 15, 4 to 10, 5 to 10, depending on how much content you're working with. Use the filters to give you a manageable set of results if you like, if you have limited resources to work with. But if I just do 6 to 15 here, I'll export that data. And just as a real quick side note on that too, as we know, not all of your keywords are going to be created equal. Some are going to be more valuable than others. And so if you want to, if you're working with those limited resources and you want to get really laser focused with this process, you can use things like keyword modifiers or even URLs to filter your keyword data set down to the most valuable opportunities. So if I was a company like Beard Brand that sells beard oil, I know all their products are housed in the collection subfolder. So what I would then do is I would head back over to SEMrush or Ahrefs or whatever tool you're using and add a URL filter on the keyword set to only look at the keywords that are ranking from URLs with collections in the subfolder. And now I'm only looking at, in this case, the highest commercial intent keywords where they have existing keyword rankings. So, and then again, I would apply that same ranking filter and just export the data. And so in the keyword opportunities tab, I'll just paste it into the template again, and it'll go through, and now it's going to add or auto apply some nice formatting to your data set. So an example of what that can look like here is you can see here from my side at the time I pulled this report, I had some keywords like SEO copywriting, SEO audit tools, agency tools, keyword tracking software, ones that have a bit higher commercial intent potentially behind them, already ranking on the bottom of page 1, decent search volume. And if we look at the keyword difficulty column, they all fit within that 60 to 75 range. So as an initial proxy, again, we're going to look at some other things to look at. I can already start to determine which ones could potentially be my best existing keyword opportunities to go after. And then what you'll do, once you've done that, just go through in the relevant column and just check yes to any that you are interested in moving further into the process. And then it will automatically pull just those keywords into the next tab in the template. So you have a nice short list to work from there. And then if you're working with a client, or even if you're reviewing internally with your team, the next thing that you're going to want to do is basically get approval from any stakeholders, right? So you've filtered your existing keywords down to the most relevant opportunities. Now you're going to want to get their approval. So once they've gone through and had a chance to approve or disapprove keywords, you want to filter out all the approved ones, and then we're going to run them through a final decision matrix. And there's 3 core components to this. We want to look at relevancy and volume, which we started to in the previous step. But the third one here is the really important one when it comes to qualifying, and that's looking at which ones can we realistically now move from the position that they're in into the top 3 or 5 positions within the next 60 to 90 days is the window I like to look at it through. So what this looks like eventually in our document is we'll have our keywords, we'll have the ones that are approved, and then finally, once we're finished, you'll see the keywords that have been assigned a yes, we can compete, and move those into the top 3 quickly. And we'll have our content types and even prioritize with value assignments as well. And again, we'll jump into that here in just a second, but that's just kind of where we're trying to get to here. So in terms of the qualification step now, there's a lot of different things that you can look at, but the biggest things I tend to look at in this process is link data, intent, and content signals. And these aren't super technical. It's very repeatable. Like the first one here, for example, is your content types. And if we look at a head term beard oil as one example, if we type that into Google, we can see immediately that pretty much all the pages ranking on the first page are assets that are ranking with a collections page, right? So we know that we want to make sure that whatever page we're using to target this keyword also aligns and is a collections page as well. So if we're using a blog post or some other content asset, it may warrant that we need to create a different type of content in order to move it into the top 3 or 5 positions. And an example of this here was back in the day working with a client. They've since been acquired. This was a few years ago. They had an interactive marketing platform. One of the features was the ability to create interactive infographic assets. And so with this, they had this solution page that they were trying to rank. And no matter how much content they added or how many links they built to it, they could not get it off the top of the second page. And so when we took a closer look at why this was the case, it became immediately apparent because we typed in interactive infographics and essentially it was just all long form listicle blog posts, content types and formats that were ranking. And so we ended up creating one of our own for the client, and we got it ranking in position 1. And you can see that over a similar time period, the platform page brought in a few hundred organic visits, but this new post, because it was aligned with the content type that was predominantly ranking in the SERP, brought in almost 10,000, had a 5.5 minute average session duration. They got tons of downloads from their interactive infographic guide that they promoted on the page, and were able to nurture them with email. So that's just one basic example. Just make sure you're targeting keywords with the correct content type. And then again, in your document here, as we start dropping in the content types, just look at the URLs for those keywords and just make sure they're matching up so that you can verify that that you're actually using that right content type to target. So here we have the second part that we want to look at, and that's really around links, domain rating, and URL rating, basically link signals in the SERP results that we're wanting to look at. So if we dive into this part, if we look at a keyword like SEO tips, for example, you can see immediately that they're all pretty well-established brands. They all have really high domain ratings, high URL ratings, and each URL ranking in the top 10 has a bucket load of domains pointing to them. So in this case, it's going to be extremely hard unless you have a domain with a high domain rating or a lot of links pointing to your existing assets. It's going to be almost impossible to move in the top 3 or 5 positions, at least within, say, a 60 to 90-day window. But if we look at another example here around beard growth oil, we can see immediately that a bunch of assets on the first page have low or even single-digit domain rating, low teen single-digit URL rating, and single-digit referring domain counts to the URLs. So if you have any type of established domain, decent content, and even a few links pointing to it, this is a prime example of a SERP that shows you can probably move up the search results pretty quickly. And in terms of a checklist I run through really quickly when I'm looking at URLs, in the top 5 or even top 3, ideally, I'm looking for at least 1 or 2 results that fall within ±5 domain rating points of my domain. Looking for low teen URL ratings. Anything above 20, 30 is starting to get pretty competitive. And then single digit referring domain counts is ideal as well, because you're not going to have to then build tons of links to rank. So those are just a few checks that I run through when I'm looking and qualifying specifically with link data. The next one is content quality. This one's pretty straightforward. You want to be looking at SERPs, or you want to be comparing your content quality against those that are ranking above you. Is there an opportunity to beat out what's currently ranking ahead of you? If there is, then that's another great signal that with a content relaunch, you can move up above those assets. And that applies to not only blog content, but solution, product pages, whatever it might be. You're ideally looking for those assets that have pretty weak content. And kind of as a side note to that as well, if you see some assets ranking above you that maybe do have really high domain authority, but they have low URL ratings and low referring domain counts and low content quality, sometimes you might still want to test going after one of those keywords too, because if you can get some links into your asset and improve and make your content way better than theirs, there's still a chance to compete. We've seen that in some cases. Here's just an example just from that SERP, like looking at some of the content that was ranking, really thin, pretty much nothing to write back home about in terms of design. So this is just an example of like, hey, we could easily beat these types of keywords. And then finally here, in terms of link data and things that I like to look at within the SERP is volatility. So if you're using a tool like Ahrefs, for example, if you're seeing for different keywords that there are URLs that are jumping from nowhere into the top 5 positions overnight, if you're seeing a lot of that volatility in the SERP, it means that Google's probably trying to still figure out what are the best assets to rank. So if you can create a really solid one and relaunch it, give it a fresh timestamp, there's a good opportunity for you to also jump up from, say, the second page into the top 3 to 5 positions as well. So volatility in the SERP is also sometimes a good directional cue that you can get some quick movement for your keywords. Okay, so you've gone through, you've pulled all of your existing keywords, you've got them approved, and now you've started to qualify them looking at content signals, link signals, and you should have a pretty much a short list. So what you want to do now is look at those and prioritize which ones have the most potential business value for the website you're working on. And so you look at that by not only business model, but your site monetization strategy. And if we look at a few examples of this, a site that's ranking primarily through ad revenue, they're going to probably focus more on the existing keyword opportunities that have informational top funnel intent, that have tons of search volume behind them, because it will allow them to get more eyeballs and clicks on their ads. An example of this is Healthline. It's one of their main monetization strategies. They go after all these big head informational topics, and they rank really well for them, and they're able to drive loads of clicks through their ads and impressions and monetize that way. Moving down the funnel though to like affiliates, you will probably want to prioritize maybe lower traffic, but more investigational mid-funnel intent. So any of those existing opportunities that have modifiers like best, alternative, versus, tools, top, things like that, where people are actively evaluating their options, you want to be ranking for those keywords and be the final click before they make that purchase so that you can get the commission. An example of this is Wirecutter. They have a review subfolder. They're actually acquired by the New York Times for millions of dollars back in 2016, I believe. But they rank for millions of these investigational or thousands of these investigational keywords. So that is where you would probably focus your existing keyword efforts if you're a company like Wirecutter, I'm thinking. So, and again, like we saw at the beginning of the presentation, you can prioritize this whole process right from the outset if you use subfolders or keyword modifiers in those filters when initially running that existing keyword scan. And then finally, if you're selling products or services, you might want to look closer at those more bottom funnel transactional in terms with like higher intent modifiers like buy, discount, sales, services, things like that. Like a company like Beard or selling beard oil, Beard brand here, for example. That's how they would focus in. Now, just to show you, this is just an example from the keyword research playbook in my SEO playbook course, where I was using this Beard brand website here as just a working example in some of the videos. They're not a client. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I was just using some of their keyword data here to demonstrate what this can look like as you're filtering out your existing keyword opportunities. You not only got all the color formatting, but as you start to layer on your intent, so you're prioritizing, you've got the ones that you can compete, and then you've got your content types assigned. So then you can start filtering, especially if you've got a really large keyword set, to hone in on the highest value opportunities. So, you know, if I was Beard brand, I'd just be looking at my existing opportunities that have investigational and transactional intent. I know I can compete, and here are all my content types that I need to make sure I'm using to go after these keywords. So once you've got all of that keyword data trimmed down, you've qualified them, you've prioritized them. Now you want to relaunch them so that you can actually start moving them up. And there's a million and one ways you could go about this relaunch process. I'm going to go through some of the quickest hit items here for this presentation. There's a little bit more in the IMG course as well. But basically option one, internal linking from authority pages, is the quickest thing that you can do. One simple way to do that is to go to like the Best Buy backlinks report in, say, Ahrefs, or I think it's the index pages report in SEMrush. And if you've published an article on a certain topic, or you've got a page on a certain topic, filter out by referring domain count, and then look for anything topically related that you can insert an internal link from. Now, that's the manual way to do it. And if you're trying to do it at scale across a lot of relaunches, this can quickly become quite tedious and time consuming. So a way that you can increase or speed this process up is you can just do a quick sitedomain.com keyword search with the Ahrefs SEO toolbar installed. And then what that's going to do is show, in this case, in this working example for Beard brand, I can see all of the pages now where they're talking about beard oil in in the content or posts as well. And I can also see the link data underneath each of those URLs. So what I would do now is export this SERP data. And then I'm going to see here in the export, I can see all of the URLs on the site that are mentioning beard oil. And then I can filter by URL rating or the referring domain count to find which of those pages are the most authoritative in terms of the link data. And so these are the ones that I would probably prioritize getting internal links from to my important relaunch pages immediately, so that I can pass some of that link value internally to those pages. And here's just an example too, internal link doc for a client we did in the SaaS space. You can see here on the left column, we've got existing. These are all the ones where we already have that anchor text present in the copy. So we can just go in and quickly add those internal links to the target pages with our anchor text. But then there's new at the bottom too. These are cases where we've identified relevant authoritative pages, but the anchor text isn't present. So we can go and like essentially add the anchor text so that we can force the internal link in there and point it to the page. And this is basically all we did for this client, like right out of the gate. We did a couple really light content changes, but it had an immediate impact on moving them up for some of their most important keywords. It's a very niche industry, but some big gains right out of the gate by cleaning up just basic title tags and internal linking, improving that. That's pretty much all we did to get these results quickly. And you can see, I think I mentioned at the start of the video that this is one I was talking about, where a quick little increase in organic traffic, but also, you know, a material increase in the new trial account startups as well. And we've since scaled this up quite a bit more, but again, this made them super happy because they got those quick gains, not only from a traffic, but a conversion standpoint, and just bought into the value of the process that we're trying to do from an SEO standpoint. Option 2 here is finding and removing cannibals.
We have a little bit of question time, Robbie.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm probably hammering through here.
No, that's great. But a couple of questions to interject with before we continue on. Both of them are from Chris. He's actually an IMG member. He firstly wants to know if you're using any on-page tools to optimize content.
Yeah, I've used Pop, I've used Surfer. I look at those more to gauge more around like semantic secondary keyword opportunities, maybe a little bit too around content outlines, if there's like subsections that we could include. So yeah, I do look at those a little bit when it comes to the content update or relaunch process as well. I'll jump in, I think it's in the next step here to a little bit more of my process on that, but I would say some of that, yes. And then I also like to do a bit of manual analysis as well of just what's out there and what's performing.
Cool. Second question is around crawl budgets. Now, Chris says that content pruning is awesome, but is there anything else that you do to optimize for crawl budgets within a site?
Yeah, so crawl budget, from my experience, again, I find crawl budget is more of an issue if you're working with sites where you've got several 100,000 pages, where you're working at fairly large scale. I don't think it's as much of a thing to be too concerned about if you're working at maybe smaller, medium-sized sites. But in terms of, yeah, pruning's one thing to definitely make sure that Google's crawling your assets as efficiently as possible, or your most important ones as often as possible. The other thing too is just looking, and this is surfaced too when you do the original site crawl in that content audit process, is there index bloat going on? Sometimes that can happen if you've got things inadvertently being indexed, right? Like site search or parameterized URLs, or even in the case of the working example in the content audit playbook, that one of the issues with that wedding site was they had, because they were monetizing primarily through AdSense, they had just crazy excessive pagination going on. And so they had 10, 20 pages broken out for like an asset that maybe had like 700 words on it. And it was just so that they could pump more and more ads onto more pages. So they had a really sort of high ad to text ratio across their site. So Google's crawling all of that, and it just doesn't send great content, I guess, quality signals in that case. So consolidation is definitely a big thing that you can do too. But again, unless you're working with like really high scale, I don't think crawl budget is a huge issue. And to be honest, I don't work with a ton of sites that are up in like hundreds of thousands of index pages. I've spoken to some people just through various communities who do work more at an enterprise scale. And that seems to be the sentiment I hear from them as well, is unless you're working with, 100, 200,000 plus pages, don't get too overly concerned about it. Just look for opportunities to clean up, prune, consolidate. And if there is stuff in the index, like site search results and things, just clean that up and view it more from a UX standpoint in that respect. Hope that's answering the question.
Very thorough answer. Thank you. I hope that answered your question. Chris, you happy with that? Let's move on, shall we?
Great.
Okay, cool. All right, so option 2 here is, finding and removing cannibalization, right? So if you're working with a website that has any sort of content footprint, again, you're probably going to run into at least one or a handful of areas where you've got multiple assets competing with one another. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this concept, but this is directly baked into the way that we approach the content relaunch and even content briefing process as well, that we'll touch on here in just a second. But what we're looking for here, for those who are unfamiliar, just really quickly, if you've got multiple assets competing for a similar keyword, say you've got one URL ranking position 5 for a keyword, it's got say 100 links, and then you've got another one on the bottom of page 1 that's also got some links pointing to it. In a lot of cases, you can merge the content from the lower ranking one into the top ranking one, give it so the top ranking one has greater topical coverage, and then 301 redirect the web page 2 into number 1 so that you're consolidating all of that link equity. So now not only do you have a more authoritative asset from a link standpoint, but also from just a pure content coverage standpoint as well. So there's always be on the lookout for those opportunities too, as part of this like existing keyword process. And basically there's a few ways you can do this. Like you can just do a simple site domain keyword search. Like you can see here, I just added in a couple of screenshots here from Moz. I was like, obviously link building is one topic they go after, but they've got like loads and loads of assets all around various topics on link building. Like what is it? Beginner's guide, link building tactics, link building in 2019, the rules of link building, the all new beginner's guide to link building. Like some of these might warrant having dedicated assets, but I'm guessing a lot of them have links. Maybe they have some sort of unique content, but there's probably an opportunity to consolidate some of this stuff into the relevant higher ranking assets as well, and immediately give them a bump from a link and a content standpoint, and just a general refresh. Another example here was another company that we worked with in the digital asset management space. Again, lots of assets. They were trying to rank for digital asset management, sort of around the bottom of page 1, but they also had all these other posts around the user-friendly guide, why agencies should use it, the inside scoop on digital asset management, criteria for deciding whether you should use it. And granted, there were a couple that we did keep live, but there were also a good handful that we ended up taking bits and pieces from, merging into the top ranking guide, and then running some 301s. And it had an immediate impact on the rankings. It moved it, I think it was like 2 or 3 positions. And we've since, with link building, some other things, moved it a bit higher. It's a super competitive space. But again, just doing that quick check was able to, give us some good relaunch activity around that URL. I'm going to share a template with you in just a second, but if you want to do a quick analysis on the URLs to determine if they're worth redirecting, or maybe you just want a 404 removed from the index to limit the number of 301s, especially if you're doing this at like really high scale, you can go to like the SEMrush, Ahrefs, drop in the batch analysis tool, and it'll give you a link count for all of those competing URLs. And so you can determine, do these assets have links? If they do, then you should probably just redirect them. You can look at the links as well and make sure that they're worth redirecting. So that can be good. But if there's no links, the content quality is really poor, maybe you just remove it from the site altogether. So looking at the data in determining whether you merge and redirect is always a good idea. But again, that process can be quite manual. So there's a second template here that you guys are free to make a copy of and give a whirl for yourself. I've also got a YouTube video on my channel. It's just a few minutes that runs through how to set up and use this template from start to finish as well, if you're looking for a bit more of a walkthrough of the template itself. But basically what you do is you export data, and this data will work with both SEMrush and Ahrefs keyword data, but you can drop in just the keyword export. You can export every keyword your site's ranking for, and then just hit run script up in the top right of the sheet. And then what it'll do is it'll go through and just look in column C here. Actually, this is really, it kind of duplicated things there, but just look where there's similar keywords. And then there's multiple assets or URLs ranking for that same keyword. And you can see the positions that they're ranking, as well as, well, the search volume is going to be the same because it's the same keyword. But this can really quickly identify potential cannibalization issues on your site. Obviously, you want to look at these closer and determine, are they ones that you want to merge? Do they warrant having a dedicated asset? But in the status column there under point 3, you can start to go through and just click the drop down and say, no, I'm going to keep this live, or I'm going to merge and redirect. Or in the case where there's no unique content, you can just do a straight 301 redirect if there's links, and just start to kind of map out some of these quick win opportunities as well. So yeah, give that template a whirl. I tested it yesterday, it's still working. So that's like a whole process in itself too. Even if you don't go through all the keyword exercise before this, if you just want to run a quick cannibalization check, you can find some good opportunities just by using that template. And then option 3, this is probably one of the biggest impacting things. Again, nothing groundbreaking here, but in terms of our process for updating and expanding content, we like to look at the age. One thing I'm seeing across, at least in the SaaS space, a lot of industries, people have really clued on to this whole content relaunch phase. So you're going to notice, like, especially around blog posts and things, everything's time-stamped in the title tag. Everything's like updated for up until like the few months before you're searching usually. So I'm noticing now, like, the window's getting shorter to where after about 6 months, things start decaying if there's any level of competition around a keyword. So it's good to revisit that and make sure that you don't have assets that are becoming outdated that way. Obviously looking at content, topical depth and coverage, design, on just basic on-page stuff. I think that's where tools like Pop and Surfer and things like that can be helpful in identifying semantic secondary keywords, doing quick scans that way. And then conversion opportunities, right? Like, you may have assets that are already ranking well, getting traffic, but are you using in-content CTAs? Are there conversion call to actions related to the stage in the buyer journey? One thing I see in the SaaS space is I have all these top funnel assets getting tons of traffic, but everything's just asking for a trial sign up or a demo sign up. And if you think about the mindset, someone who's in the awareness stage, just sort of finding out about this is even a problem or an issue for them, it's a pretty heavy ask, right? So one of the things we do is we go through and do an exercise where we basically try to align relevant CTAs with, based on the stage of the funnel. So one good formula that works well is on like top funnel assets, where you have, you know, X mistakes made by, and then call out the persona. Like, so X mistakes made when investing in whatever software, like something that agitates a fear is a downloadable sort of one-pager sort of checkpoint. That's something that works really well in top funnel assets, but, you know, any sort of checklist are downloadable. And then as you move down into the mid and lower funnel assets, that's when you can start introducing more of your like trial purchasing CTAs. Like, so that's just part of the process as well. And when we're doing and analyzing all of that, we build out really detailed content briefs for our clients. And I even do it for my personal content as well. in some cases, like I might have a content brief that's 1,000 words long for more technical or in-depth topics. But that generally just leads to higher content quality production. And that's something that we've been actively working with on our team. We've recently hired a couple content writers where basically all they're doing is creating these detailed briefs and drafts for our clients. And in these, we're not only including our primary, secondary keywords, we're listing out if there's any opportunities to consolidate content from other URLs based on our cannibalization analysis we just did. And then within each section, we're calling out, like, is this a new section we're going to add based on the topical depth of the higher ranking assets? Where do we have gaps? Or maybe in an existing section, we need to expand and give that more coverage. And so the way that we do that is we'll add notes in the doc itself, but then in the comments, we'll add links to references of articles that are doing really well or covering something really well for that specific subsection. So our writers then know they can open this document and they have everything they need to create a better piece of content than what's already performing well. So it takes a bit of time, but if you can build out a process and scale it, then it can help get those quick, fast gains. And so once we've built out those briefs, you see here, this is just like kind of an example pipeline. This is morphed a little bit, but basically you got your new and existing keyword assignments. For the existing ones, we track our status and then we drop in our content brief URLs like the one you just saw. And then from that, our writers will drop in the drafts. And then when they go live, we move them into our rank tracking. So it's a very kind of conveyor belt approach, whether it's a new asset or an existing one. And, we have some clients where we're creating like 15, 20 pieces of content a month for them. So we have to have like this sequential sort of streamlined process in place in order to keep scaling with quality without sacrificing quality. So that's how we kind of move it into that final phase. And then in terms of tracking it, like obviously rank tracking, you can tag your keywords in tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush, like for relaunches and things like that. For our SaaS clients, we would give like 30-day rolling views here where we're able to show, and we filter these reports often if we're doing a big bunch of relaunches where we'll have just a relaunch dashboard. So we can say, hey, these are only the URLs that we've relaunched. Over the last 30 days, we can see across these relaunched URLs, here's how the rankings are trending. Here's how the organic traffic's trending off of that. And then ultimately, are we getting more leads and MQLs from this traffic? So this is good if you're doing relaunches at scale, like 5, 10, 15 a month. If you're doing it at lower scale, you can probably just use a Google Sheet, drop in the URL and just track the ranking month over month to make sure that it's moving up and how that's correlating to traffic and conversions as well. So depending on the scale, either one works, but the main thing is just to measure and make sure what you're doing is moving forward so you can validate that to your boss or your clients. So yeah, that's kind of losing my voice a little bit now, but that's in a 10,000 foot view, the process there. Hopefully get some ideas sparked, but feel free to grab those templates, copy them, give them a whirl. And then if you want to connect, like I said at the start, I'm trying to get a bit more active on YouTube, where I'm basically just sharing these types of templates and short condensed tutorials. So jump over there if you want to check those out.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Robbie.
I got a lot out of that as well. I feel like everyone who's tuning in is going to be adding these SOPs into their project management systems, and when they're bringing on new clients, if they're agency facing. Can you give us a ballpark of what you guys tend to charge for something like this at Vreo?
Yeah, so we actually, like these processors, we actually don't do one-off sort of audits or strategies like this anymore for our clients. It's usually part of like a larger engagement now. But when we were selling content audits, just like one-offs, which again, kind of like the quick win process, which is baked into the audit, fantastic sales tools. Like if you can quickly show all the issues that a site has and the opportunity to get growth, like way easier to then sell the ongoing services that way. So yeah, value in that. But in terms of what we were selling them for, usually anywhere from $2,500–3,000 starting point. But we did one for a site. It was kind of, I won't go too far into what it was, but they had 500,000 pages on their site, so that was a huge lift. Took us over a month to work through that, but you obviously scale up from there. But I would say anywhere from $2,000–3,000 if you're working with a decent sized site with at least, say, 500 to 1,000 pages on it.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see that pretty much any website that hasn't had this done for a number of years and has been around a while is going to be in a bit of a mess. And this is definitely going to produce fast results. I mean, cannibalization alone, it's just something that every website is going to have if it's just building out random blog pieces without really having a strategy and keeping track of what's been done already, right?
Exactly, yeah. And like, it's amazing how many times you see businesses, like, literally, if I ever get a new SEO lead, the first thing I do is I go into Ahrefs or SEMrush and I literally filter out all of their existing content opportunities. Because if I see there's 5 or 10, it's just like, bingo, like 30, 60 days, we can immediately show results while we're working on some of the longer term initiatives in the background. Like, that's the first thing I look at is go straight to one of those tools and filter the keywords, positions 4 to 10, to get a real quick pulse on the number of opportunities that they have there. And, to people in SEO who do this stuff a lot, it seems probably like so simple. But if you jump onto a call with like a CMO or a VP of marketing, someone who's not in the weeds as much, but just overseeing teams and whatnot, if you can show them like hard data points like that, like here are specific URLs, especially if they're in like higher intent sections of their site, where we could do like this, and this, and get it moving in the top 3 or 5 positions. And then start like introducing language, like what would an extra, what's your conversion rate look like on these pages? What would an extra 100 visits a month that we think we could get to this in the next 60 days? What would that mean from a demo or a trial sign up standpoint? And start to talk that language with them. Man, you can just see their eyes lighting up, because I feel like a lot of people, I don't know, when they go into these calls, it's like, well, this is, we do keyword research and things like that. But it's like, if you can actually get into the nuts and bolts and show them specifics and tie that back to their business, you're going to close a lot more clients. So going down the rabbit hole a bit.
That's great advice. I think often the metrics and the terminology we use is too abstract for the prospects that we're talking to.
Yep.
We've got a couple more questions just to close off the workshop. Do you mind if we get to those, Robbie?
Yeah, for sure.
Some good ones.
Yeah, so we have one. It's, how do you know where to draw the line when it comes to expanding the scope of a page? For example, if you have a page that originally targeted organic dog food, but it's also ranking for dog food, how do you handle that?
So with this one, like expanding the keyword footprint of the article, making sure that we're just getting the right topical coverage with one piece rather than starting to compete with others. I think that's how I'm sort of interpreting that question.
I think so. Or yeah, I think, and also pick a business. Definitely let us know if we're interpreting it wrong. But at what point would you make a different page for dog food versus,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the check that I do when it comes to determining if we're going to introduce cannibalization by expanding or trying to target more keywords with one asset, I do use Ahrefs specifically for this and their SERP overview report. If you go in there, basically go to the keyword explorer, enter the couple keywords that you have in question if you're not sure if they're going to compete or they warrant dedicated assets. And then for each of those keywords, look at the SERP overview report and then look at the column in there that has the parent topic. If the parent topic is exactly matching the keyword that you entered, then it shows that it warrants a dedicated asset. So in the case of dog food and organic dog food, like if you enter those 2 keywords in and basically the SERP results or SERP overview report for those keywords, one shows every keyword's exactly matching dog food. And then on the other one, the SERP overview, the parent keyword is exactly matching organic dog food for most of them. That would tell me that they weren't dedicated articles. But if you see strong overlap, like the same parent keyword ranks for both of those articles, then you should use the same asset to go after both of those terms. Hope that makes sense. Kind of hard to explain it without clicking around a screen, but that's how I try to delineate between the two.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think that's very clear.
Oops, we just had that one. Sorry.
Oh. And
here's one from Maddie. She wants to know about keyword cannibalization. If your client is on the thinner side of available content, is it better to have more content on the site, even if they're ranking for similar keywords, or to remove the cannibals? So I guess what she's asking there is it better to have more content, even though it might be cannibalizing itself, or to remove that?
Yeah, so what I would do if it's cannibalizing, I would take any unique content from the cannibalizing one. I would merge it into the one that's currently ranking the highest for that keyword. Maybe that means adding 1 or 2 subsections to the page, if possible, if that allows it. And then I do a 301 redirect from the lower ranking one. But ideally, especially in the case of, I'm not sure what rankings these respective ones are, but I'll just give an example. If you have an article ranking in position 1 and another one in position 2, that's like the holy grail, right? So we're not going to, even though they're technically cannibalizing one another, we're going to leave them because we've got the top 2 spots in the SERP. But where the case for consolidation really gets strong is if you have one in, say, position 3, 4, or 5, but then you have another one in 7, 8, or 9, right? To where they're separated by a few spots. One's top or middle page 1, the other's on the bottom of page 1. In a lot of cases, you're just splitting yourself, but both link equity and content quality between 2 assets. If you possibly can, merge the content in the top ranking one, do a 301. That's what I would do. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Very well. I believe that gets us to the end of the questions. Just give everyone a last chance to put their questions in.
Man, they've been easy on me.
While we're waiting for any other questions, you can save $10 on your IMG membership if you use Robbie Richards SEO. So hold that discount code. And Maddie says, thanks. Chris says that you've always been the real deal, getting serious results. So you've got a lot of fans.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. I don't know about the real deal, but just trying.
Robbie, can you give us the contact websites or social handles once again for people who want to get in contact with yourself directly or your agency?
Yeah, sure. So my personal blog is robbierichards.com there on the screen. That's just basically my personal blog where I just write about a bunch of SEO tutorials and tools I'm using and even some case studies. Agency is Virayo, Virayo. Yeah, we're just pretty much working primarily with SaaS companies now, but that's if you're interested in chatting, that's where we can connect there. And then in terms of social media, I don't know, what is my handle on Twitter? And I think it might be Robbie Rich MKTG potentially. But like I mentioned, I'm trying to get a bit more active on YouTube. It seems like people are enjoying the video content a bit more these days. So can connect there. Hopefully, if you just search my name on YouTube, hopefully my channel pops up somewhere. And yeah, I share every now and then some tutorials there. So it'd be great to connect on that platform.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So guys, we're putting these live trainings together each and every month, following more or less the same format, but always with a different expert, a different IMG instructor. So if you want to either catch the replay from today or get notified when the next episode is going live in about 4 weeks' time, just go to the broadcast page. It's internetmarketing.gold/the SEO Lounge. There's a link to that page in the footer of our website if you can't find it. Just really like to thank Robbie for the workshop today. I know a lot of time goes into preparing these, and certainly sharing those secrets that you've been honing over the years is of huge value to the SEO community. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And also thank you, of course, to my co-host Lauren and all of the attendees that have come along today from our various channels and outreach for the event. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to come along. Next month, we have Kyle Roof. Kyle is my co-founder at IMG and also a well-known SEO instructor too. He's got a few courses inside of IMG, but in the next SEO Lounge, we're going to be focusing on widening your keyword net. So Kyle is going to be teaching us his method for creating semantically rich pages that Google loves to send traffic to. So look forward to seeing you all there in the SEO Lounge next month. Lauren, anything you'd like to say before we go?
Good morning, good night, good evening, and we'll see you next month. Thank you all.